Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. Sunday, August 28th, 2022. Today is Live with CDP Sports Podcast, Season 4, Episode 25. And I'm looking forward to my guest today. He should be on shortly. And my guest today is Frank Fazi. He's a former radio personality on the Fan 590. He also was doing some reporting work for the Leafs and the Blue Jays in the 90s. And he was also a musician, and he is a huge Detroit Red Wings fan as well. And right now he's in Florida. So I will bring on Frank in a minute or two, and we're going to talk about his career in radio and also the music industry and maybe a little bit of Red Wings hockey as well. So you guys can check Frank on Instagram at Frank Fazi, and he's also on Twitter as well. So just bear with us. He's in Florida, so he's just getting set up, but look forward to speaking to him today. And he did cover the Jays and the Jays and the Leafs in the early 90s. I guess for a couple years helping out with covering for Howard Berger. And back then, the Blue Jays were back-to-back World Series champs in 92, 93, and the Maple Leafs were going to Western Conference Finals in those years in 93 and 94. They lost to the Kings in 93 and 7, and then in 94, they lost to the Canucks, I think, in 5 games, but they had really good hockey teams, and it was a good time for sports back then as well. And Frank was in the music industry as well. So just give me 1 second, guys, and I'm going to bring on Frank Fazi, and we're going to talk a little bit of his career. Hey, Frank, good afternoon. How are you doing in Florida?
It's just started to rain, Chris, so I had to go indoors. I was going to have a beautiful swimming pool in the background, but it started to rain. I want to thank you for having me on today, Chris. I'm flattered, and I think it's great what you're doing. And don't stop for anything. Keep pushing on, buddy. It's a great thing you're doing.
Thank you. One of my inspirations was a football player named Vince Papale. He played for the Eagles in the mid-'70s. He was actually a bartender, and he was not drafted in the NFL, and he loved the Eagles, and he made the team as a walk-on, and his stories kind of inspired me. I'm a little bit older than he was when he went into the NFL, but it just doesn't matter what age you are, is if you have the passion and desire to do something, do it. And he's been one of my inspirations in what I'm trying to do with switching careers later in life.
Absolutely, Chris. It's I'm a guy that's bounced from career to career in my life. So whatever drives your heart, that makes you want to get up every morning and strive for something. The money will come. Money isn't what makes people happy in this life, right? So don't stop. Keep your love for sports and keep your drive for these podcasts. I think it's the way of the future. And I think that you're really onto something good here, because people want to hear some positive stuff, especially in these times, all this pandemic and all the stuff we've gone through the last few years. So it's great stuff you're doing. And it's funny, but you must know the Plimpkin story, the guy who dreamed of playing in the NFL and got to play one game with the Detroit Lions, a similar story to what you're saying. And Steve Sullivan, there's another guy who inspired me in the Sioux. He never made the Greyhounds the first year he was drafted. He went up to Thunder Bay and played in a Northern League, scored 220 points. The next year, the Greyhounds opened their eyes and said, we should give this kid a shot. And by Christmas, he was the best player on the Greyhounds, I thought. And you know what he did after. He did the same thing on the New Jersey Devils. He was a walk-on. Everybody kept saying the same thing to him. You're too small. You're not big enough. And he didn't listen to anybody. And he had about a 7 or 8 year NHL career. And, pretty good little player. Played for the Leafs, I think, for a minute even.
Yeah, Yeah, I remember him too, and stories like that motivate me. And every guest that comes on here has a story too. And some of these guests tell me stuff I didn't even know about, and it kind of inspires me and stuff like that. So yeah, you're right. There's too many negative people out there, and a lot of people that don't. Um, they just, like I said, I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. I've already proved people wrong the last 2.5 years because they didn't think I was gonna last at this, and I'm like, I'm not giving up on this.
Chris, no matter what you do, there'll always be haters. There's people that don't like me. I mean, but I don't worry about them. Like a salesman says, I'm looking for the one who likes me. I'm not looking for the ones. If people, their jealousy is one of the seven deadly sins, right? People will always be jealous. And they're especially jealous of people that will take a chance or step out and do something that they love because maybe some of them don't have that in them or the guts to do it. So don't listen to anybody and
Yep.
keep your spirits up. And I love to talk about sports and music. So let's do it.
Yeah.
I can start my story from how I, started in Sault Ste. Marie, a great little hockey town, and worked my way to Toronto and got in the music scene and never made it big. I never made the big bucks, but I have so many memories and experiences that to me are worth an insurmountable amount. I wouldn't take the lottery, the Ontario lottery, to give back the memories I've had in my life, Chris.
I was gonna say, have you ever thought about writing a book about your career?
It's funny you said that. A good friend of mine last night, Shane McConnell, a guy who I played in a band with for years, who lives in New Mexico now. He's one of my best pals. He said to me last night, on Chris's show, you should ask if there's any ghost writers out there because, if anybody's interested in writing a very interesting story. But basically, I was a lucky guy. I have to pinch myself. I grew up in a small town that was a hockey town. My whole neighborhood was hockey. I mean, there was the Dubas family. Of course, Kyle's dad and uncle lived around the corner from me. Walter, his uncle, was one of my best pals, who we later played on a Toronto Lee's Palace hockey team together with Andy Frost. We were on a line together. And Walter's a great guy. So I'll never criticize Kyle. All my friends are always harping at me to fire Kyle. But I can't say that because I love the Dubas family. They're great people. They're one of the nicest families. They were a family in my neighborhood that had a full scale hockey rink in their backyard, like blue lines, red line. Kyle's grandfather coached the Sioux Greyhounds. So they're a hockey family for generations. And they're just great people, and they lived across the street from Angelo Bambaco. If you're familiar with him, he was an owner of the Greyhounds and then got involved with Phil Esposito with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So my whole neighborhood was just Lou Nanny, Kerry Forelli, who was a stud. The great Fred Perlini lived not too far from me, and his sons have done well. They're both coming up in the hockey world. And Freddie's been a friend my whole life. We keep touch all the time, and I hope he's watching right now. He was an inspiration to me. He was such a great athlete as a kid. I always admired and looked up to him. And basically, then I just had too much energy for the Sioux, and I wanted to get to Toronto and pursue. And I was lucky that I had a father who was a jock. My dad coached high school basketball, and my uncle was a really good athlete. You'll like this story because I know you're a Tiger fan. My uncle got a walk-on letter from the Tigers and went to the rookie camp. He actually hit a home run in Tiger Stadium, my uncle. So he was a good ball player. He's an American. Half my family's from Michigan, half is from Ontario. So I'm a dual citizen. That's why
Actually,
I'm down here in Florida.
actually, it's funny, Frank, as well. I have family in Michigan too, cousins. They're in Taylor, Michigan, and Allen Park, Michigan, and
Oh,
Royal Oak, Michigan.
is that what made you a Tiger fan, Chris? I'm
Yes, my
surprised you're not
cousins.
a Blue Jay fan.
No, my cousins. I grew up in Oakville after we left the Sioux, but my cousins in Michigan, when I went and visited them in the '70s, I would always be in awe of Tiger Stadium crossing the Ambassador Bridge into Detroit, and they used to take me to Tiger games. I'm like, wow, Tiger Stadium, Alan Trammell, Lou Whitaker, Sparky Anderson. So they converted me into being a Red Wings Tigers and Pistons fan and Michigan
Oh,
Wolverines
you gotta
fan.
love that, Chris. I love my Red Wings, because my dad and uncle were from the Michigan side as a kid. They both loved the Wings. And then, like you, my uncle took me down to Tiger Stadium when I was 10 years old because my hero, and I know he's a little before your time because I'm older than you, Chris, but if you remember Bill Freehan, who I think just passed away a couple years ago, I got to shake his hand when I was like 10 years old because I had a broken femur bone, and they took me, how they take like people who have injuries up ramps and through the back way. Well, I had a broken leg, so they let me meet the players. I met Bill Freehan, which was one of the thrills of my life as a kid, next to seeing Bobby Orr in Sault Ste. Marie as a kid. I'll never forget that, because luckily Phil Esposito had a cottage 3 doors from my great aunt. So every summer we'd run out there and we'd be like, my mother would want to kill me because I'd just linger around Phil Esposito's house like a little, puppy dog, right? When's he coming home? When are we going to get to see him? And I'll never forget the day Bobby Orr was out there visiting him, and I saw Bobby Orr at 10 years old. It was like I had just seen God, so because number 4 was my idol as a kid, Chris. And then basically I took that to Toronto, and all my connections, and my guitar player and I from the Sioux, Shane McConnell, we went down to Toronto, and we just kind of got lucky. We started playing in a little club called the Upper Lip with a guy from the Downchild Blues Band, Hawk Walsh. And next thing you know, Gatto was playing with us, if you're familiar with Greg Godovitz. And we had Errol Starr, another recording guy from a Canadian artist, and just about everybody. And then we moved it to a bigger stage at Lee's Palace, which really became an incredible, it would be hard for a younger guy to understand, but basically every Canadian musician who was anybody had come there to play with us, from Honeymoon Suite to, Tommy Lee sat in with us one night. There was a packed crowd of 500 people there, and they went nuts. He got up and played AC/DC with us, and we had everybody sit in with us, from Tesla, Loverboy came to our jam, Colin James, Platinum Blonde, Kenny McLean, Mark Holmes. All those, Terry Watkinson from Max Webster used to get up and do Webster songs at our jam. The place was packed every Sunday at Lee's. And it was just to this day, I have to pinch myself when I think of the things that went on there. And not to mention that, Chris, and I'll stop in a second and let you speak, but just what channeled out of there, like Randy Cook, our drummer, one of our drummers, now plays with Smash Mouth. He lives in LA. He's one of the top 200 drummers in the world. Greg Critchley, just about Dave Bendeth, everybody sat in with us there. Sergio Galli, just about everybody in the music scene in Canada, Liberty Silver, Holly Cole, just about everybody would come. Christine Simpson would sit in the front row every night. I'm sure you're familiar with her from, Hockey Night in Canada, Craig's sister. Craig Simpson invited me to his wedding because all the Oilers used to come to our jam at Lee's Palace when they were in town. I remember one night, Mess and Gretzky and all those guys had us buying drinks for us till 5 a.m. in Lee's Palace. The owner just kept the door open. He basically, wouldn't kick them out because it was Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. So the experiences that I had in the 80s around that band, and, Steve Jensen, my guitarist, was from Zappa Costa, and my drummer was from Platinum Blonde. And, just the experiences that we had there were mind-blowing, Chris. I can't believe it all happened the way it did. But that's my story. And then it led quickly because, a guy named Ralph James was one of my best friends. He books Nickelback and Tragically Hip. And Ralph was best friends with a guy named Andy Frost, who was from Winnipeg, and he worked for the Winnipeg Jets. And he kept telling me, Ralph, he said, Andy's trying to get a job here in Toronto, and when he comes, he doesn't know anybody here. He said, I want to introduce you to him. So when Andy came to Toronto, he got a job at Q107 with around the same time John Gallagher and Steve Anthony and all those people were jumping in Q107 with Gary Slate. Andy became like my best pal. You know, I spent so much time with him and Ralph James from Harlequin. We were like a trio, and we were always at Andy's house with Derringer and playing trivia games and talking hockey. We were music guys that loved hockey. So basically, out of that came an idea through a friend, Bob Makowitz at Q107. He said, Frank, you're like such a unique guy because you're a good, you're a pretty good hockey player. You play sports like crazy, and you're a singer guy in a band. He said, there's a lot of interconnecting stories with music and sports, like Elton John, Rod Stewart, Billy Ray Cyrus. They've always had interest in sports or connecting stories with soccer or baseball. So we started a little show called Jock and Roll that got syndicated on The Fan. Andy helped me a lot with it because he had so much experience in radio. He's such a great guy, Frosty. And Makowitz and John Derringer was the voice of our show. I know John's gone through a bit of the Me Too crap this year, and I feel sorry for him because John is a super talented guy, and I hated to see him leave Q107 in that manner. But he was the voice of our show. And basically, we did topics every week about, like Tom Cochran's song, The Big League, how it was about a hockey player who got killed on a highway. We did a story on, Rod Stewart, his love for soccer, Elton John's love for soccer. There was so many stories, of course. The late singer of Tragically Hip, Gord Downie, was also a big hockey guy. And there's the Bill Barilko song. And so we did stories crossing, basically, Chris, crossing stories, and it was called Jock and Roll. It was syndicated for about 2 years, and it was just a thrill. I got to interview Mario Lemieux. I got to interview Mike Greenwell, Mark Langston, all the baseball guys, Eckersley. I interviewed Dave Cohn and Mark Langston and just, a ton of ball players. What a thrill. And I'll never forget being in the dugout. I got to tell you this one little story one day. I'm in the dugout, and I think Bruce Barker, who was sitting in there with me, and Dave Cohn came in, and he said, does anybody want to play catch here? And I thought, I can't catch this guy's ball. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a decent ball player, but it's Dave Cohn. You know what I mean? He said, no, I'm just going to throw it easy. Come on out. So I ended up playing catch with Dave Cohn on the Jays field. So, Chris, the experiences I've had in my lifetime, again, I've never made the big bucks or, I'm lucky to be here in Florida and live a decent life. But I pinch myself, Chris, at the experiences that I've had in my life. I drank out of the cup with the Oilers. I got friends with through Wayne. I got to know, Paul Coffey was in 2 of my classes in Sault Ste. Marie. So through Wayne and Paul, I got to know the Oilers. I went to Boston when they won the cup. I was drinking out of the cup with those guys. And so Chris, I'm I consider myself one of the luckiest, people around. I'm blessed, and I've had a lucky life, Chris. And it all came from doing what you're doing, pursuing what you love and getting after it. And don't listen to anybody, Chris. Just keep doing what you're doing. I think this is a great thing.
Well, I was going to say thank you so much, and I was born in Sault Ste. Marie, but I didn't stay there long.
What?
I was born there in '72, but then I think my parents moved in '74 to Oakville. But born in Sioux, so I'm a Sioux native, and
so you're a Sioux guy too. Wow,
but not very long. Not very long, and then I
Right.
moved to Oakville, and then I've been in Guelph the last 40 years. But hey, I went to my first game at Tiger Stadium in 1982 when I was 10 years old. August '82, Frank Tanana, Texas, Jack Morris, Detroit Tigers, and my cousin Terry, her favorite old-time Tiger player, she lives in Taylor, Michigan, is Bill Freehand.
No way.
Yeah,
he was my
I have his
idol as a
bobblehead
kid.
too.
Freehand. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I loved him. And I love that middle infield too. Like you said, Whitaker and Trammell, those guys were amazing.
Yep.
I love the Tigers. A lot of Sault Ste. Marie people are Tiger fans. We're just a quick bridge We go to Sioux, Michigan to buy milk, Chris. We go there to buy gas. We go there to buy, back in the day. I mean, the bridges now with this COVID has become, but the two Sioux were, and growing up, I was lucky to grow up in that town. There's so many good people there. And, it's just such a sports town, Chris. The internet has in a lot of ways been, caused a lot of problems in society, in my opinion. When we were kids, Chris, we were saying it was nothing to get 8 or 10 guys to go play baseball or sweep and scrub
or street hockey.
Yeah. Nowadays, with these phones and Call of Duty and all these stupid games kids play, shooting people, and I just think it's brought a lot of negativity in the world, Chris. I just love that when I was a kid, we all went to play golf and hockey and baseball, and we played every sport. I wasn't great at any of them, but I could play all of them because that's all we did as kids. You know what I mean, Chris? And I'm sure, you're only 10 years younger than me. You're from the same generation. We didn't have these phones and this crap iPhone, Apple, and, it was sports. We loved sports, right, Chris?
Yep, I agree with on your points there as well. But without this technology, I wouldn't be able to do this podcast show. So I take it.
Point.
I try to take it this
Good
way,
point.
Frank. It's like food and alcohol. There's food good for you, and there's alcohol that's bad for you. But social media, if you use it the right way, it can be a good tool too.
I would totally agree with that. There's great things about the internet. Absolutely. I'll tell you, one of them that I love the most is getting around Florida, where I'm new here. I've only been here a year, without having to know where you're going. You just put it in your Waze. I mean, to me, that's the best thing about the internet. It's just that I don't ever have to worry about trying to find some place, it's when you're foreign to an area, or it's just so easy. That Waze thing is one of the greatest inventions ever. But you're right. Without this technology, we wouldn't have a lot of the great stuff that we have now. But it also causes a lot of problems. Leaves kids sitting on their couch, eating chips, getting fat, and not getting out and getting exercise. Wouldn't you agree, Chris?
I agree. And when I was younger, living in Oakville in the 70s, I played street hockey every day after school until 9 o'clock at night. Played baseball in the summertime with my friends. I don't regret growing up in the 70s and 80s. And also, Frank, to be honest with you, the 70s and 80s are the two best decades for music, in my opinion. 70s and 80s.
Oh,
music.
I totally agree. You'd never get a fight with me on that. I still, in my car, all I have is Journey, Foreigner. I'm stuck in the 80s, buddy. I can't say I like some of the hip hop. I like some of the newer music because I'm a musician and I appreciate any good music. So there's some of it I like. I like Three Doors Down. I like Live and Stone Temple Pilots. I like some of the grunge music, but I'm still an 80s guy. I listen to Journey and all those great bands, the Eagles. That's really what's driven me. But going back to Lee's Palace, just thinking back, because last night I called a few of the guys in the band to tell them to listen to this podcast, but it was incredible because every Sunday, because the guys in my band played with bigger bands, my bass player, Jeff Jones, was touring with Red Rider. He played on Lunatic Fringe. He played on White Hot, all those great Tom Cochrane songs, Boy Inside the Man, The Big League. He played on all that stuff. So Jeff attracted a lot of people to Sunday. Everybody would want to come and play with him. And that was the case with all the guys in my band. I was so blessed. They were so talented. And, we're going to have a big reunion next summer. And I'd love to have you come and see us. I think you'd be pretty impressed. I was lucky to have great guys behind me. And then at least every week, some celebrity would want to come and play with us. I think we had Ben Montench, who wrote, he played in the Heartbreakers with Tom Petty, and he wrote in a New York Minute by Don Henley. He's a genius. He played with us for 3 weeks, Ben Montench, Chris, I'm just so lucky at the experiences I had. Tesla sat in with us. What's his name from Skid Row? Sebastian Bach, who's from Toronto. I kind of helped him and Jeff Healy because they were younger than me, and they used to come down to my jam and they wanted to sit in. And Jeff was intimidated. You know, his friend would come in and say, "Hey, my friend's blind. He's 16 years old. He'd love to get up and play with you guys." And I said, sure, but he's underage. Like, I don't know if he's going to get kicked out of the bar. But anyways, he'd come in and he'd put his chair down, Jeff Healy, and he was blind. You could see he was scared, but he was 16. And the raw talent that he had, you knew it was going to blow up. You knew for him, and the fact just that he was blind, like Stevie Wonder. And so I was one of the first guys to let Sebastian on a stage from Skid Row. He was a younger kid, and Jeff Healy. And, I sat in with just about every Canadian musician. I'm just lucky, Chris. I'm just a lucky guy. Grew up in a good time, and it was a lot of fun, so it's, I feel blessed in life, Chris. Money is never going to be the thing that makes people happy, because I feel like I won the lottery on just the friends I had, the people I was around, all the great sports people, going back to the Sioux people, the Dubases and Perlinis and all those, those people I grew up with in the Sioux that were such great athletes. Jimmy Ralph also, grew up in the Sioux. Ralphie, the great comedian. He's such a funny guy, when he imitates Don Cherry and all those guys. So Ralphie, all those people were influences on me. I admired them. I looked up to them, like all of us, Chris, in Northern Ontario as little kids. What did we want to do? We all wanted to be in the NHL. I mean, that's every kid back then. I'm sure you, as a kid, dreamed of being in the Tigers or being a pro athlete yourself, right? We all wanted that.
Definitely. Hey, and when I grew up in Oakville in the 70s, I obviously loved the classic rock, but I also like disco music too. I know back then it was either you like classic rock or disco, and I know a lot of people, it's either you like it or you hate it. But I had a lot of great choices back then, and the music back then, even today, when I hear that music from the 70s and 80s, including Saga or even Bob Seger, it just takes me back to my childhood days.
You like that music, eh?
Yes.
When you say disco, Chris, what do you mean disco? You mean like Donna Summer? You mean like the late 70s or Saturday Night Fever?
The Bay City Rollers, Casey and the Sunshine Band, the Spinners, because I used to do rollerblading back then, and that was popular.
That's crazy. My first job at 16 in Sault Ste. Marie, and you know how popular it was. Well, I worked at Saints Roller Rink as a DJ. That was what kind of, and it's so funny. It went full circle because we had Wolfman Jack as a guest in my DJ booth when I was 16 years old. I worked with Wolfman Jack. So that was kind of the start of really what. And then, of course, Trooper, this is the funniest thing. Trooper came to the Sioux when I was 16, and they roller skated with us, and because they were playing in the Sioux at the Memorial Gardens, which is where the Sioux Greyhounds play. And funny enough, 25 years later, it just tells you how the world and life goes full circle. I opened up for Trooper with my band. And meanwhile, 20 years before that, I was a DJ at a roller rink, a little kid, and they came there and everybody wanted their autograph and blah, blah, blah. And 20 years later, I'm opening act for Trooper. It's just, that's life, Chris. And that tells you why you should keep after what you're doing, because, you just never know when a break will come. Look at that guy, Joe Rogan. I mean, I'm not going to talk politics, but yeah, he tried everything. He was kind of a loser. He couldn't get successful at every career that he tried, and then it just blew up for him. He got on that talk show and he started talking about topics that were sensitive, or people that were outspoken, and his show is just huge now. So I guess that's a little thing towards you, Chris, to not to not give up and keep, if you love doing this, just keep doing it. And I love what you're doing because I love sports talk, and I love, I'd love to have as many of these sports talk shows as possible, because sports has been the, savior of my life, even during dark times, Chris. If you go through some rough days in your life, which we all have, I don't mind telling you, I had a few years where I suffered from a bit of mental health and addiction. I don't mind saying that on here, because I think that we should all face those issues, and thank God, through help from KMH and going to meetings, a guy who was a star for the Sioux Greyhounds, Graham Bonnar.
I remember him.
60. Do you remember Graham? Yeah, he
Yes.
played on the World Juniors, scored 66 goals in the OHL. He was a stud. Like, he should have easily made the NHL. He was drafted by Montreal, and he ran into those problems. And God bless Graham. Now he's quite a guy. He works at KMH, and he spends every waking hour of his life trying to help people that are in trouble or suffering from mental health or addiction. So people like Graham, we got to tip our hat to. And yourself, Chris, there's been a lot of hockey players and athletes that have suffered from this, and, committed suicide, and, different issues. So I'm always up to talk about, problems. If you're struggling, it's okay to not be okay. You know what I mean, Chris?
Yeah, and one of my friends was saying Bell's got this thing called Let's Talk, but my one friend, Lindsay, says it should be Let's Listen too, because listening is just as important as talking as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Graham, guys like that really inspire me. He didn't make the NHL. I mean, he put on the shirt for a while. He had his troubles, but he does so many positive things now. He's involved in puck support. And speaking of which, I want to thank Sandra Murray for connecting with me with you. Sandra is a really nice girl, and she works with puck support. And I think that's a very important part of sports. We can't ignore people's troubles, because even a pro athlete who's making millions of dollars, we struggle with understanding that he can not be happy. He can be a very unsettled person, even though he has a lot of money, or any pro athlete. So I think in today's day, we shouldn't ignore people that have any kind of struggles. And so that was a part also of my life that I'm proud that I made it through some struggles. And I have two beautiful children. I just had two twin grandsons. It almost
Congratulations.
Thanks, Chris.
That's awesome.
So I've been a blessed guy, Chris, and it's just life goes full circle, and the main thing is we love our family and we cherish our friends. I've been so lucky to have so many people in my life and friends around me. I just consider myself a lucky person, Chris. Really do.
And I got to look at it that way too. And also, I'm going to tell you this, Frank. For years, when I was younger, I was like, "Oh no, people who have celebrity status, fame, money have to be happy. It's people that are poor and don't have as much that are miserable." But that's not the case, because I stayed in my former job too long just for the money. And to be honest, I'm not going to say which the company was. Obviously, I've moved on from it, but I was miserable even with the money. And now, okay, I'm making less money right now, but I'm also I'm much a happier person. This podcast show, my media work, and doing Rogers TV as a camera operator for the Guelph Storm, I'm a much happier person than I was even 3 years ago.
That's amazing, Chris. And don't, like I said, don't stop. Don't listen. You told me yesterday you had people throwing negative comments, and no matter what you do in this world, people are going to throw people won't like everybody. It's just, I don't ever let those things slow me down. I love me. That's the first most important thing, is you have to love yourself. And if you love life, you love people, and you enjoy waking up in the morning and doing what you do, that's everything to me. So don't listen to anybody, Chris. I think it's excellent. And you said you also work with the Argos. It's funny because when I worked at the Fan for those couple years, and I was covering, whenever, like you mentioned on your prelude, that I covered for Howard Berger, and that's pretty much what I did. Like Howard was so busy that when he couldn't make a Leaf practice or a Jays practice or batting practice, or he couldn't get out to a celebrity golf tournament or the Canadian Open, they would send me, Scott Metcalf, Dan Shillman was at the Fan there at that time. He's a great broadcaster, Dan Shillman.
He came out.
He's done so well.
He came on my show a year ago. Yes, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you up there. Cut you off.
No, please.
Dan Shawman, I didn't think I'd have a hell of a chance in hell of having him on my show a year ago. And he came on for half an hour. And as soon as I talked to him about Ernie Howell on the Taggers back in the 80s and 90s, he opened up to me. And I was shocked that somebody I look up to in the industry came on my show. Great guy. Same as Jerry Howarth.
Oh, Dan Shillman is done so well. Like, I was flattered that I got to work with him for a couple of years, and Scott Ferguson. They had me, a little show they sparked up called Off the Wall with Frank Fazi. It was Scott Ferguson's idea, who covered the Blue Jays. And basically it was a show about quirky things that athletes do, like how Wade Boggs ate chicken before every game, how Mike Greenwell wrestled alligators. They all had these weird superstitions. Bill Lee, the pitcher, used to wear a Rush t-shirt under his uniform, the same Rush t-shirt every game. So we did a bunch of stuff with Scott and Dan. So I'm flattered that I got to work with those guys. They were really nice guys. I was blessed to work at the station. Gord Stellick was also great to me back then. I got to cover the 4-on-4 when the strike, funny, of course, just my luck. One of the 2 years that I was covering the Leafs was the NHL strike year, of course. So I missed half the season, but I went out to cover the 4-on-4 hockey that they had with Roenick and all those guys out in Hamilton at the Cops, and just all the experiences I had around hockey. Pat Burns, I interviewed him about playing with the Good Brothers. I still to this day, Pat Burns was not the easiest guy to interview or to speak with. He had a bit of a cold side to him, but I had the ultimate respect and admiration for him. I just thought he was a very serious guy with a great direction. And I think I still to this day think he's the best coach the Leafs have ever had. I mean, and the proof's in the pudding. He brought them the closest they've been since 67 to the Cup. I'm not a Leaf fan, but for a lot of my friends, I lost a friend 2 years ago, Mike O'Brien in the Sioux, who was the biggest Leaf fan ever. And he had a heart attack and died. And sometimes it bothers me, Chris, because some of my friends that love the Leafs, I'm getting older, they're passing away. And I'm thinking, poor guy, he never got to see them win again, But let's hope Toronto, for the Dubas family, I love the Dubases. I really hope the Leafs turn it around and get on track. And, they've just had that monkey on their back, losing out in the first round every year. And it's just poor Leaf fans. Toronto deserve to bring that Stanley Cup down Yonge Street. I don't know if you'll like it. I'm not a Leaf fan, but
no.
But for my friends, Sil Simone, my buddy, he's a great guitar player. He played with Rick Emmett and Tom Cochran and several others. This guy loves the Leafs. I mean, he's, all my friends in the music business and, that love the Leafs around Toronto. I'd almost like to see them win the Cup just for all my buddies. You know what I mean? But, but it was great to work around the Leafs. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm a Red Wings fan. I'm still not over the 93 loss to the Leafs, but I've had Joe Bowen's son, Sean Bowen, on my podcast. He's with the Argonauts. He's a great guy. His son Sean, and I've had Mike Ross on, who replaced Andy, and he's a really good guy too. I've befriended Mike Ross as well, and just getting to know some guys from the Leafs, even though I'm not a Leaf fan. It's like, you know what? I hope one day they do get their cup, because Joel's been with the Leafs since '82. Jim Ralph's been with the Leafs a long time as well, alongside Joe. And Mike Ross does a really good job. I liked Mike when he was on satellite radio, and I guess he did some work up in Ottawa. And it wasn't easy for him to replace, fall in the footsteps of Andy Frost. And he was very respectful to Andy Frost, and also Paul Morris, the original PA announcer for the Leafs as well. So
I
when you get,
love,
yeah,
you know, it's funny, is Frosty's like one of my best friends, and he did a fantastic job. I'll never, you know, Frosty was great. He had a great voice, great speaker, super articulate guy. Andy is you've never met a guy who is so fanatical about pronunciations. He's perfect for that job. He always knows how to spell everybody's name, and he's the perfect guy. But I guess Shanahan wanted to change there. I don't know what the story was. I think it's a mistake, because I mean, Frosty's one of my best pals, and
yes,
I don't like that they fired him. The same thing might happen with Dubas. You know, if they get rid of Kyle, I might start hating the Leafs even more, because they could get rid of the people that I loved, Frosty and the Dubases. So it was tough when they let Andy go, being such a close friend, and he was so good at the job. I'm not sure what the direction was, but, and going back to what you said, Chris, Paul Morris was one of my idols. Like when I used to go in Maple Leaf Gardens and hear those shrill calls, you know, Toronto goal scored by number 17, Wendell Clark, assisted by number 14. You know, he just had that beautiful, smooth voice. I love that guy. He was amazing. Big guy. Have you ever seen Paul Morris? He was
no,
very large fellow. Yeah, he's a big man, but what a voice he had, you know. I just loved his shrill sound in Maple Leaf Gardens. But what went on around Maple Leaf Gardens was amazing. You know, we used to, like, we all stood above the Reds. There'd be Frankie Venom up there, funny enough, the late Frankie Venom from Teenage Head, myself, and all kinds of, you know, people in, of course, what's his name? The redheaded kid who does the Blue Jays now. He used to stand with us too. He was a young kid.
Jamie Campbell.
Kevin,
sorry? Jamie Campbell. That'd
exactly,
be Jamie Campbell.
Jamie Campbell. So Jamie used to stand with us up there, and you know, all of us would stand up and talk hockey. And you know, Dick Beddoes sat below us. You're probably too young to remember Dick Beddoes.
I remember
but he was,
him.
You remember him, eh, Chris? You're amazing. But Dick used to sit below us with his hats. You know, he used to wear those fedoras with his wife, Cecilia, I believe her name was. And we'd go down and talk to Dick on every intermission about hockey. And he just loved talking to us because, you know, we were, you know, and going back to Fred Perlini, who was my buddy, you know, as a kid in the Sioux, he played for the Marlies when we'd go to those Leaf games every night. So I'd go to Maple Leaf Gardens at noon hour to watch Freddie play, because he was pretty much the best player on the Marlies, and I grew up with him. And then the Leaf game at night, I'd be in Maple Leaf Gardens from noon hour till 11 o'clock at night, and I wasn't even a Leaf fan. You know, and then starting to work around them with the fan there for a few years. So Maple Leaf Gardens was, I don't know how much time I spent in there, but it had to be a couple of years. I think I've seen over 250 Leaf games in there. So Maple Leaf Gardens will always be a special place in my heart. You know, I know there was some dark stuff going on in the Gardens that we don't want to get into, but it was, that was, you know, sad that a lot of that stuff went on down there in Ballard. I question sometimes Harold's, the way he carried on. He's a bit of a bigot. You know, Harold was a unique guy. You know, I mean, I don't think he'd fly today in the Me Too kind of politically correct world we live in today. Harold Ballard probably would have been canceled. What do you think, Chris?
Absolutely. It's like with Don Cherry too. And hey, I was gonna say also, Frank, we're talking about this, not just sports, there's a human element to the side of it too. Once you get to know people, we all have our favorite teams and likes and stuff, but
Absolutely.
but there's a human element as well. And by the way, I was only able to go to 2 games at Maple Leaf Gardens. My late father took me to 78 against Hartford and 1980 against the Stanley Cup champion Islanders. But you know what? Even being a Red Wings fan back then, it was such an honor to go to Maple Leaf Gardens.
Absolutely.
And it's just
Chills.
I was in awe when I went there as a kid, and I was lucky that I got to go there a couple games.
So funny that we're both Red Wing fans, but I remember the brawls in there between the Wings, and it's funny because from the Sioux, I knew people on almost every team. I mean, I went to high school with Doug Shedden. I don't know if you remember Doug. He's a good goal scorer. He played alongside Mario in Pittsburgh. There was so many guys that passed through the Sioux. Mike Siltala was from the Sioux, and Mike Schmidt. There was Gus Greco, played for the Windsor Spitfires. I grew up with Gussie. So there was so many hockey players that came out of there. So I almost knew somebody on every team. So over the years, Chris, it's funny because I built up this stick collection. I had over 60 NHL sticks signed. I had Mario's, Wayne's. And anyways, a number of years ago, I ended up selling most of them. I regret it a bit. I had Guy Lafleur's, Salmings. I had all of them signed. I had I sold them to some online guy. I kept 6 of them, though. I kept Wayne Gretzky's and I kept Messier's because he gave it to me and personalized it to me in Boston when they won the cup. So I kept a few, the collectibles, but I don't have too much stuff left. I had a lot of memorabilia back in the days. I was so lucky. All the players would hand me their sticks. Yari Curry gave me a stick right off the ice one night. It's just, nowadays, I don't know what they're worth anymore. It's just a bunch of old lumber in my house, but it's, I was a lucky guy, buddy, to have grown up in that era. And, hockey's, I'd never made it in hockey. I only played as a kid in high school hockey, that level of hockey, but hockey has been such a great savior in my life in bad times, and sports as a whole is I inspire and encourage every kid to get out and play sports, because if it wasn't for sports in my life, Chris, I might have been a casualty of depression or suicide. Sports has been a great enlightening thing in my life, Chris, and it's great. I'm flattered again, and thank you for having me on to be able to come and sit and chat about all those old great times. It was amazing.
Sports got me through a lot of hard times too. When I lost my father in the mid '80s, I lost him 2 days before Christmas. December 23rd, 1985, and it was hard. I'm actually sharing this with you. I usually keep this to myself, but I blame myself for a couple years. It was really hard, and then I had teachers and principal back in the 80s telling me I would be a dropout, I would be unsuccessful, and I use that as motivation to stick it to them, because just because somebody loses a parent doesn't mean a human being, a child, is going to be a dropout and get into the wrong crowd and stuff like that. And and you know what, that back then, that should have never been allowed. A teacher or a principal should never ever say that to a student. So that really stuck with me back then, to prove them wrong and stuff like that. And you know what, I don't use what happened to me is an excuse for people to feel sorry for me. I use it as my story to motivate me, and it changed my life. And you know what, I'm not alone. There's other people out there too that have lost a parent or parents when they were younger in life, and I had to grow up earlier. I didn't really get to be a kid, a teenage kid, a typical one. Back then, I had to grow up a little bit earlier and be more responsible. So
absolutely. Wow, that's sad that you lost your dad when you were 13 years old. I couldn't imagine. That's really sad, Chris. But I'm sure it made you a stronger person. I think of so many sad stories. Luke Richardson became a really good friend of mine on the Leafs. We were really tight buddies, and he asked my band to play at his wedding in Ottawa, which we did. It was, what a thrill. Him and Stephanie married, and I'm sure what they went through with their daughter. Such a sad story. She was a good hockey player. She was going to apparently make the Canadian women's team. She had a good shot at being on the Olympic team. and she, I guess, was suffering from depression. And so Luke and Stephanie lost their daughter to suicide. And Chris, it's all these things in our life, they make us stronger people. We all have to go through adversity, buddy? But and I went through my share, and I'm just happy that I made it out alive. And I have two beautiful children again, and I've been blessed in life, Chris, and I'm sure you have too. And I'm sure what you went through with your dad made you a stronger guy, growing up with the loss of your father.
Yes. And I was going to say, Frank, Sandra Murray wanted to put a comment on here too. Sandra's, I've only known her for 2 months, but it feels like I've known her for years. She's been very supportive of me as a person in my podcast. And she's helped me get a few guests like yourself on and a couple other guys from the OHL. And she just wanted to say thank you, Frank, for taking me down memory lane and agreeing to do this show. I love your transparency about your struggles and victories in life, and can't wait to see you again in Hockey Town.
Thanks, Chris. I'm flattered you had me on. Please thank Sander for me. And I have a lot of friends influential in the music business and sports business. And because you're such a good guy, and I'd like to see your show prevail and reach higher goals, then I'll do my best to send people your way, hockey players, athletes, musicians that have some interesting stories for you. Thanks again, Chris, and all the best to you and the future of your dreams here.
Do you just another comment here from Ronald?
Sure.
I worked with Frank in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and got to see his band in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. Ronald's his name.
Oh, Ron Kersner. Yeah.
Kersner.
Yeah.
Yes.
He saw us open for Trooper. And it's funny because I don't know, Chris, it's funny because my family, when I grew up, I had a great aunt. I'm Italian, She was like a legend in Sault Ste. Marie. She opened a pizza place in the 50s called Aurora's Pizza. And it was like lineups down the street. Well, I mean, Coffee, Gretzky, all those Greyhounds over the years would eat her pizza. She's a legend. Graham Bonar, he always asked me, hey, Frankie, when are we going to get some of that Aurora's Pizza? Because I used to make it. I know how to make it like her. So she's a legend. It's kind of like, what would I compare it to? I don't know if you know Toronto well. It's kind of like California sandwiches in Sault Ste. Marie. Like it's that old ma and pa kind of popular Italian place. So that was my grandmother's sister. So as a kid, all those hockey players, Hartsburg, and, the Sioux had so many great guys on the Greyhounds that passed through there. Doug Shedden, Steve Gatsos, the list is so long. I mean, Chris Simon, Denny Lambert, all the great players that played in the Sioux, they all knew about my aunt's pizza. So when I'd run into them, they'd say, Frankie, where's that pizza? I want that pizza. So it's funny you brought up that story about Ronnie, because he used to deliver pizzas for me, the guy that just sent you the message. But that's a little funny side story. But anyway, Chris, once again, I assume we're pretty much wrapping up here.
Yep.
But I want to thank you.
Yep.
It was a fun conversation.
Yep. Just two more questions. What was it like being owner of Mojo's Pizza, and how did you come about that, Frank?
Sure. Well, it was only because my aunt was such a legend in the Sioux. You can Google her, Aurora Bukovich. In the Sioux, she's like, I think they'll know her name for another 100 years. She's like an institution there, so it was just, I was lucky to be in a family where I had an aunt who made amazing Italian food, and she taught me how to do it. And so did my grandmother. So I can't take the credit. I have to just say that I tried to make it as close to as well as she did as I could. That's all I'd say about it. I don't think I made it as well as she did, because, Chris, those family restaurants, as they get passed down, they always drop off a little bit. You know what I mean? It's never the same when the original owner is in there. So I was just lucky. And then, when I was in that kind of midlife, mid-30s, I didn't know what I was going to do. The band thing was fading out, and my bass player was so busy with Burton Cummings and Tom Cochran that he just didn't have time to play with us anymore. So the music thing started to tail off a bit. And I thought, hey, I'm going to open a little pizza place because I knew how to do that. I had it for a few years. It was doing well, but I'll be honest, it's not the business for me. It's just too much hard work, Chris, running a restaurant. It's too time consuming. You're in there 15 hours a day. My kids were little. I had no life. I was making dough and sauce 24/7. And it just started to, I loved the pizza. I loved, the camaraderie of having people come in and get pizzas and say hi. And I kept all my NHL pictures on the walls with Gretzky and Messier, and everybody liked to come in and see the spectacle of all my hockey pictures, and I loved seeing the people. But the work involved in a restaurant, Chris, I would tell you, stick to interviewing people about sports. That's what I'll tell you. Don't get into the food business. It's a real grind, and there's how that happened.
Okay, and I just got two quick questions. We'll wrap it up. How did you become a Detroit Red Wings fan? And what are your favorite? Who are some of your favorite Red Wing players? And what other sports teams
I'm
do you
glad you
follow
asked me
besides the
this.
Red Wings?
I'm glad you asked me this, but like I said, my dad and uncle were from Sioux, Michigan. So, and I mentioned this name a few times. Fred Perlini was a big influence in my life, and he's such a great guy. He's been my friend for over 5 decades. We played hockey against each other, and he runs hockey schools in the Sioux. He's a legend in the Sioux, and his father as well was maybe the best. Well, and this is a funny story. The Red Wings used to hold their training camp in Sioux, Michigan, believe it or not. This is
Years
way
ago.
back.
Yes.
Yes, way back. And Fred Perlini was playing, he'd go out as a walk-on. He'd go and skate with the Wings because he was so good. And I'll never forget, it's a true story that Gordie Howe once said that Fred Perlini was the best player he'd ever seen. Even Phil Esposito says it. It's on YouTube. He says that Freddie Perlini was the best talent that ever came out of Sault Ste. Marie. He never, politics. Some people don't. It didn't work out for him. He went to Chicago, took a shot with the Blackhawks. Didn't work out for him, but what an athlete he was. And his son was such a friend and influence in my life there in the Sioux. So and that connection to Michigan with my uncle, I love the Wings. I love their uniforms. We got more in the Sioux as a kid. We would get more Red Wing games on TV than we got Leaf games. Back then, you remember, Chris, the Leafs were only on Saturday nights, right? But I'd get to watch the Wings 3 nights a week. Do you know what I mean? So
on WKBD channel 50.
That's right. Bud Lynch. Do you remember Bud Lynch?
And Bruce Martin,
You're too young.
But anyways,
and going back to your question to finish off. Sorry? Hello?
I was going to, yeah, I say it was a Wi-Fi connection. And Bruce Martin was from Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, who covered the Red Wing games.
Yeah, he was friends with my uncle.
Wow.
It's funny you said that. Bruce and my uncle were good friends, and that was also my connection. My uncle took me down to Red Wing games for free because he was friends with Bruce Martin. My uncle grew up with Bruce Martin. It's funny you mentioned that. But my favorite Red Wings, just to finish off your question, because we might be losing our signal, Steve Yzerman. It just, Gordie Howe's Mr. Hockey, and I got to meet Gordie on several occasions. He is one of the nicest men, that you'll ever meet in your life. So humble, such an easy guy to approach and talk to. Meeting Gordie Howe was probably one of the highlights of my life. But Steve Yzerman, because he's from my generation, is my favorite Red Wing. And then I gotta give honorable mention to number 13 and number 5 because I love Datsuk. I think Datsuk, two-way player. Mike Babcock said it, who I interviewed. He said that he's never coached a better player than Pavel Datsuk. Just the way he played the detail to the defensive part of the game, is two-way, 200-foot guy. I love Datsuk and I love Lidstrom, but Steve Yzerman he's my Red Wing. He'll always be number 19. So
Gotta
there's the
ask you,
answer.
gotta ask you this quickly. I have you on here. Sergei
Sure.
Fedorov, one of the greatest Red Wing players of all time, Hockey Hall of
Unbelievable.
Famer. Number 91, should it be retired or not? Obviously, the Ilitch's family wasn't happy when he left, but yes or no, will 91 get retired at Little Caesars
No
Arena?
brainer. The guy scored 5 goals, the winner in overtime against Washington that time in the play. I'll never forget it. There's not even a doubt. I mean, I loved Adam Graves. He was a great two-way player.
Yeah.
His number is retired as a Ranger, Adam Graves. I mean, Adam was a good hockey player, warrior, great guy to have on your team. But I don't know. If Adam Graves' number is retired, I would think Fedorov would have to qualify. I don't know. What do you think?
Same Fedorov, Datsud, and Zetterberg are the next 3 numbers that should be retired. And it took the Tigers 25 years to retire Lou Whitaker's number 1. Lou Whitaker's number should have been retired in 2000 when Comerica Park opened along with Trammell. The Tigers really dropped the ball with Trammell and Whitaker, but at least they've made it right now. So, yeah, I'm hoping Steve Yzerman can talk to the Red Wings ownership and say, hey, Sergei Fedorov is in the top 4 Red Wings of all time, in my opinion, top 4, top 5, and his number should be retired. He helped the franchise win 3 cups in 97, 98, and 02, and he's a Hockey Hall of Famer too.
You won't get any argument from me on that, Chris. Fedorov was just such an explosive player. The first guy that really skated, him and Burry, in that McDavid kind of, that like super high speed, like do everything at a super high speed and handle the puck at top speed. They were those first kind of guys that really brought that in. And then, of course, McDavid mastered it. He's a freak of nature. Just watching the guy is incredible. He's just such an explosive player to watch.
And
so
before
it's Fedorov, I'm a big fan.
Definitely. And Sandra Murray just wanted to say one more thing. Steve Yzerman's doing great things in Hockeytown. The boys coming up here have a lot of potential to turn things around. I think it's still going to be another 1 or 2 years, in my opinion. We'll see, but I like their new head coach, Derek Lalonde, from the Tampa Bay Lightnings, and it was time for Jeff Blashill to leave after 7 years.
Agreed. He's from Sioux, Michigan, Jeff Blashill. I got to throw that in. He's from my hometown, but I agree. It was time for Jeff to step aside. And Sergei Fedorov, funny you mentioned, was one of the guys was up for the coaching job. They chose the guy from Tampa, but I think FedEx was one of the guys they were thinking about.
Wow, because Steve Yzerman, I'll say this about Steve Yzerman, he doesn't let anything leak to the media. I've never seen someone in management keep things hush-hush like Steve Yzerman. Nobody, even in the Detroit media, has an idea what Steve Yzerman's next move or moves is going to be in Detroit.
Chris, I think Steve Yzerman is one of the brightest guys. I always said in sports that the best athletes, the Joe Sakic's, the Steve Yzermans, the guys like that, the Bergerons, think of the guys today that play such a smart game. There's a reason they're better than everybody because they're smarter. They're smarter people. Your smarts come into play when you play sports, and Steve Yzerman, I have the most admiration for him. He's such a gentleman. It's funny because at NHL Slow Pitch in Niagara Falls one time, he asked me for a ride back to Toronto with a friend of mine. So I got to sit in a car with Steve Yzerman for 3 hours driving back from Niagara Falls. It had to be one of the thrills of my life. He's such a soft Sorry, Chris?
He's my hockey hero, and I started following his career back in the early 80s with the Peterborough Petes.
We're the same. I love Yzerman. And, he's just such a soft-spoken, humble, humility, just a very humble guy. And, I have a friend named Stacey Hayden. I got to throw this out there. He played with David Bowie. He played guitar with David Bowie. He's an incredible guitar player from Toronto. He lives in Los Angeles. And he's been jabbing at me on social media for several months. So, Stacey, if you're listening, he's been saying they got to fire Yzerman. He hasn't done anything there. They're just losing. They got nothing to show. Well, I would argue that. I think they're on the right track. And I think that you got to give the guy a little bit of time. And I told Stacey, my friend, I said, Stacey, let's not forget, this is the guy that built the Tampa Bay Lightning. They just won 3 Stanley Cups. Steve Yzerman built that team. Let's not forget that. So I have all the faith in the world in Steve, and I think in the next couple of years the Red Wings are going to make the playoffs. They have some studs on that roster now. That's Sider, Lucas Raymond. I mean, Vrana's a player. They're picking up every year now. They seem to be getting stronger. So the goaltending and the defense, that's where it all starts. You got to build from the back out. You got to get good defensemen. I believe that in the NHL is. I think that's where the Leafs are lacking, in my opinion. They keep trying to add stud forwards, but I think they're ignoring their real problem, and I think it's on defense. I think that Morgan Riley's overrated, and these are just my opinions, but I think defense, the back end, is where you have to build the strength in the NHL. That's my opinion.
Absolutely. Starts with the back end, the goaltending and the defense. And that's what Steve Yzerman's doing in Detroit. I think he's upgraded the goaltending. I think the defense is a little bit better. And that's how it works. It's like in football. It's the O-line and D-line. You can have your quarterbacks, wide receivers, but in football, it's the O-line and D-line. And then in baseball, it comes down to pitching. You're pitching. And then basketball, you need a point guard and you need a center.
Absolutely. Yeah, defense in hockey. I think the Leafs are kind of lacking on the blue line a bit. But again, because of all my Leaf fan friends, I'd like to see them get it together. But
at least
for the
win
Dubas
one
family who are...
Well, you got to look at it this way.
I don't know, though. I think it's just my opinion, Chris, but you look at the roster this year, don't you think they've dropped a bit? I'm not sure they've gotten better from last year. I don't.
It's hard to tell,
so.
But I think one of the issues is the salary cap. As you know, Frank, now sports is no longer just sports; it's also salary cap. And I think the Leafs are, in my opinion, they're tied up with all their big salaries to their big five guys. And
yeah, that's right. They have too much money, and that they're top heavy, And the only contract there that bothers me, I'm going to be honest, in my opinion, again, I'm not Kyle Dubas or anybody like that, nor do I know the insides as well as them. But from my sight, from watching the games, Marner's worth what he's getting. He's such a great playmaker. His skill level, his vision. He might be a little soft in the big games of the playoffs, but Matthews needs him, because he's the facilitator. He's the one who gets him the puck. And Matthews is the finisher. So I would never get rid of those two guys. But in my opinion, the dead weight there is Tavares. But that's my opinion. I problem, and he's kind of declining. I know he's a good leader and he's a smart guy, but I think he's the one that they've got to lose that contract. I lost you.
Definitely. Oops. Okay, because I was just going to wrap it up, Frank. Can you still hear me? Okay, I don't know if I lost Frank or not. Hey, everybody, just bear with me for a minute or two. I'm going to try to get Frank back. It's just a Wi-Fi connection. It does happen on podcasts, TV, and radio. So I'm just, there he is. There's Frank.
We are.
Yeah, you're back.
Chris, okay. I'm just going to show you before I let you go here how beautiful Florida is, how beautiful where I live is. But thanks for having me on, Chris. And it was great talking hockey and music and all those things with you. And again, before I let you go, I'm going to try to round you up some guests, because I think it's great what you're doing. And I'm going to talk to some friends in the music and sports business, get them on your show, and keep it up.
Okay, no problem, Frank. I want to say thank you so much for coming on live with CDP Sports Podcast today. And thank you to Sandra Murray for putting me in touch with you. And if you're interested, I would love to have you back as a guest again in the future, even to talk a little bit more about your career in music. I have no music talent, by the way. I can't sing, by the way. I chased out a bar in New York City a couple years ago when I did karaoke, and it emptied out the bar. And the guy goes, "Never again, never again."
I would have liked to seen that, Chris. You know what, Chris? I'm the first guy. I'm an average singer. I was just lucky. I could carry a tune, and I had a great band behind me, just great musicians. So when you have great guys around you, they make you look good. You know what I mean? It's like having Matthews and Marner as your line mates, right? So my bandmates were so good. But again, Chris, thanks. And I'd love to come on in the future, and I'll definitely pursue some good guests for you. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you so much, Frank, and we'll keep in touch. And Sandra says thank you for doing this, and I will talk to her later on, and we'll definitely keep in touch with you on social media, Frank. Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thanks, Chris. You too. Have a great day. Thanks again.
You too,
Thanks,
Frank.
Sandra. Cheers.
Anyways, and Sandra Murray, thank you for setting this up. It was great talking to Frank Fazi today as well. So I hope everybody enjoyed my podcast with Frank and that. And yeah, I could have talked to Frank for a couple hours on here, but I just want to say thank you to everybody watching this podcast live on my YouTube channel, on Facebook Live, and on Twitter. And then later on, I'm going to download it to my audio platforms as well. Before I wrap up this show, guys, I'm just going to show you a little clip of the Argonauts' victory over the Hamilton Tiger Cats from Friday night at BMO Field. This clip is courtesy of TSN and the CFL.
With a pair of close losses for both the Ticats and Argos in the rearview mirror, and Labor Day lingering straight ahead, it's the start of another QEW home at home with bragging rights and East Division points up for grabs as we welcome you to the CNE and inside BMO Field. Tiger Cats won the toss. They deferred. Toronto takes the football to kick things off here in week number 12. Cutting it back against the grain. It's Von Leek right away out to the 41-yard line. And McLeod Bethel Thompson, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions against Hamilton so far this season.
See if they're able to create a little bit more open space there with an added speedy threat in that receiving play.
Matthew Schultz gets the hold down and chop this one through the wind. It's Seth Small. Beatty pushing it, and it will sail just inside of the uprights.
The extra offensive linemen, even double tight end formations, running that football, trying to wear down the Toronto front.
Play action this time. Schultz rolls to his right, throws across his body. Big hit at the goal line, reaching out for the end zone. Lamar Durant. Touchdown, Tiger Cats.
He holds on and fights his way in for the game's first major.
From 30 yards away. And he knocks it through to extend the lead for Hamilton. That stays in the gun. AJ Ouellette next to him. Play action, flips it out flats. Touchdown, Charlie Gibbons Jr. As the Argonauts close the gap here at the end of the first half.
To the running back, Ouellette. They bring Gibbons across the formation, kind of lose him.
6 plays, 70 yards in less than a minute. And with just 23 seconds to spare. Dwayne, thoughts?
I'm trying to piece this one together because they were in field goal formation the entire time, but clearly Domagala wasn't going to take a 10-yard run.
Small leans into it. The depth, it's good. Knocks it through. This one from 56 and a half away from Morris Beatty, and that would have been good from 66 and a half. There's no question that 14 in double blue has the leg for that one. Leaving the field goal for the hero at the end of the first half. Seth Small, who digs into this one from a very makeable distance, and more to go back into a game in which he started. For now, it's the Argos looking to the end zone over the top. Shot! Tavares Daniels. In a game in which it felt like Hamilton was finding answers, ways to stay out in front. Back down inside the score zone for the Argos. They just cashed in with Tavares Daniels. Where will they go here? Hamilton over the middle, dives into the end zone. Touchdown Argos as they extend their lead.
Continuing here tonight as the Argos take hold of all of the momentum with a couple of quick back-to-back third quarter majors.
Talked to a CFL quarterback earlier today, said, what should I be expecting to look for this Toronto Argonauts offense? So, well, they haven't been able to beat man coverage very much lately. Empty it out, 3-by-3 they go. Evans wants it quick. This time he rips it, it's intercepted. Going back the other direction. interception, the third interception of the night for number 3. House call. Jamal Peters, touchdown.
Sits back for a minute on Tim White as the quarterback is looking off. As soon as he comes back White's way, you're seeing sort of, you mentioned the view from up high. You can see that one unfolding in slow motion from here.
The extra point is good. Maxime Latour snaps it back. Haggerty with the hold. And Hamilton will end the ball game as it's victory formation for the Double Blue with turnovers on 4 of their last 5 possessions down the stretch. Injury concerns.
Anyways, guys, the Argos won that game 37-20. That clip was courtesy of TSN and the CFL as well. Just to let you guys know, this Wednesday night, 7 o'clock on Twitter Spaces, I'm going to be doing the Argo Bounce live audio show with my co-host Nick Small this Wednesday at 7 o'clock, and we're going to break down the 37-20 win for the Argonauts over the Tiger Cats. The Argonauts are now 5-5 on the season, and Nick and I are going to talk about preview the game against the Hamilton Tiger Cats again for the 4th time in 5 weeks on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, and that game on Labor Day is going to be next Monday as well. And guys, just to also let you know, I'm going to be actually on a podcast show this week as a guest. Tuesday night, this Tuesday at 7:15, Sean Stewart, who is the founder of his own podcast show in the Detroit area called Sports for America. I will be on his show, and I will promote it on my social media pages. And I'm going to be talking a little CFL with Sean Stewart as well. And you can check him out on sportsforamerica.com. And I look forward to speaking to him on his podcast. So that'll be the first time I've been a guest on someone's podcast as well. So again, check out the Argo Bounce live audio show this Wednesday night at 7 o'clock with Nick Small, my co-host on Twitter Spaces, which is a live audio on Twitter. And I'm looking forward to that. Guess what, guys? My next live with CDP podcast is going to be this Tuesday, August 30th at 4 o'clock Eastern with my guest, Jarius Loval. He's an inspiring actor and sports fan in New Jersey. So Jarius is going to talk about trying to get into show business, entertainment as an inspiring actor, and also talk a little bit about sports as well. And I believe he's a pro wrestling fan as well. So hope you guys can tune into season 4, episode 26 of Live with CDP Sports Podcast this Tuesday, August 30th at 4 o'clock Eastern with Jarius Loval as well. And like I do with all my podcast shows, guys, I'm just going to wrap this up. Live with CDP, the audio version is going to be downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn. And also, guys, StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP podcast. And I am working on getting some local sponsorships for Live with CDP Sports Podcast. Stay tuned. I might have something coming up very shortly. And also, I have an announcement to make within the next week about my show in September. And it's kind of exciting news as well. And you guys can also follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP on TikTok. Live with CDP on TikTok as well. And I'm hoping to have some new podcast shirts, new redesigned shirts come out, hopefully in September and October as well. And you guys can also check me out on wordpress.com/home live with CDP.wordpress.com. I wrote an article this week why the CBL, the Canadian Elite Basketball League, failed in golf in their 4 seasons here. I think I've had a lot of positive reviews about it. There's a few people that aren't crazy about it, but to me, I personally think they made a mistake moving the franchise to Calgary, but we'll see what happens there as well. So I hope you guys can check out that article again on wordpress.com/home/live with CDP podcast.wordpress.com. And you guys can also check me out on beacons.ai Chris Palme, where all my social media content and media sites are on this page as well. And before I go, guys, I'm just going to show you my new business card I got created. Digital business card created by my friend Martina Martina Burnett. Martina Burnett. And this is my digital business card here. And I have paper ones too. And all you do is take your camera and you can scan it. It'll take you to beacons.aa, and basically every website I'm on and social media site I'm on there as well. So, and if you're interested in coming on my podcast show, please all my information, my email address, my numbers on there as well, and beacons.ai / Chris D. Palme on there as well. So hope you guys check that. I think she did a really nice job as well on my business card. And yeah, like I said, I look forward to it as well. And I think that's pretty well it for my podcast show, guys. Yeah, and also a shout out to Are You Serious Tap and Grill on 130 Silver Creek Parkway in North St. Guelph. 519-766-0230. They are the official pub of Bills Mafia in Guelph. So if you want to watch a Bills game at a pub in Guelph, they are one of the Bills backers in this city for that as well. And they do have good food and good drink. And a shout out to the bartender, Dave, as well. Again, I want to say thank you again to my guest today, Frank Fazi, for coming on and talking about his career in radio and as a musician and his stories in sports as well. So I really enjoyed talking to Frank, and hopefully we'll have Frank back on again in the future as well. And he's from Sault Ste. Marie, and I was born there, but I didn't live there that long. I think I only lived there until 74. So again, I'm going to wrap up this show, guys. And just to let you know, yeah, the next show will be Tuesday, August 30th at 4 o'clock with my guest, Jarius Lovell, as an aspiring actor and sports fan from New Jersey. So that'll be season 4, episode 26. And I'm going to be trying to work on more guests for next week and the week after as well. So again, I want to say thanks to Frank Fazi for coming on, and Sandra Murray, a big shout out to you for setting me up with Frank on here as well. So guys, just give me about 10-15 minutes and I'll have this podcast show downloaded to my audio platforms, and you guys can listen to it later on. So I hope everybody has a great day. We'll see you Tuesday at 4 o'clock for another edition of Live with CDP Sports Podcast, and then Wednesday 7 o'clock on Twitter Spaces for the Argo Bounce live audio show with myself and my co-host Nick Small. So I hope everybody has a great day, and thanks for watching Live with CDP Podcast and also listening to the show later on. We'll see you guys Tuesday at 4 o'clock for season 4, episode 26 of Live with CDP Podcast. Have a great afternoon, everybody.